Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome you to Ripley County here at Osgood. A couple maintenance items I want to do. There's some water up here in this little blue bucket if you guys would like water, and around the hallway is the restrooms. I don't want to take up a lot of time. You guys want to hear from the state right now, but rather quickly, SIEGA is Southeast Indiana Growth Alliance, which are the 5 counties down here in Southeast Indiana. For this project, I think we're going to have Union County be in addition to this, for this project specific. SIEGA's been around a long time. It only made sense that the 5 counties down here look at this as something viable for our region. Quickly, if we would, so that everybody in the room knows who everybody is. Mike, if you'd like to start off, just introduce yourselves and kind of go around the room real quick.
Sure. Mike Perleberg, one Dearborn, the local economic development organization for Dearborn County.
I'm Mary Mark Curry from Aurora. Derek Walker, city manager in Aurora.
Brian Patterson, Franklin County Council.
John Palmer, Franklin County Economic Development.
Randy Lyons, state representative, District 68.
Mark Gard, Deputy Clerk Treasurer, City Riding Center. Ron Eaton, I'm with IEDC Community College.
Linda Emery, City of Lawrenceburg. Susan Craig, Southeast Indiana. Mary, Southeast Indiana Planning.
Roxanne Meyer of the Sales Town Council.
Brady Center, County Clerk. Susie Swain, Switzerland County.
John Bonds, Switzerland County Economic Development.
Brady Heisman, Clerk Treasurer Mylan.
Doug Price, School Superintendent from London.
Nick Roken, County employee.
Simon Bender, Dearborn County Redevelopment Commission.
John Myers, Southeast Indiana Small Business Development Center.
Susan Braca, Brady County Development. Ken Fowler, Indiana Small Business Development Center. Karen Snyder, Southeast Indiana United Way.
Alan Weiss, Mayor of Greenville.
Michael Schwebler, one Dearborn Economic Council.
Joe Fagan, IEDC. Trevor Lane, IEDC.
So Trevor, can you hear okay back there? Is it too loud? The right volume? All right, great. Well, first thing I want to do is thank IEDC for putting this project together and for them coming down to explain a few things to us. Again, this was rather quick for us. We are not RDA, but the closest thing is the regional group that we have together, which is why we started this. We've got a lot of partners in the room we want to recognize. But again, without taking up all the time for saving them, I'd like to introduce Mark Kowalski from IEDC, and he'll be doing a presentation for you guys.
Thank you, Gary, and I want to thank all of you for inviting the IEDC to come down today to talk about a new, really exciting initiative that was created with the support of our partners in the General Assembly this past session, really building on kind of the foundation that was established with the Regional Cities Initiative, was ultimately carried forward with the 21st Century Talent Region work led by then Secretary Milo. And now is really the next opportunity for Indiana, and hopefully one that is able to positively impact every community around the state. I think is the ultimate vision here. And I'll kick off, I guess, the presentation itself with a little bit of background about why this idea of talent attraction and retention remains critically important for the IEDC and what we see as for the state more generally. And Mike, if you want to move to the next slide. The first two we'll just click through is kind of the history and the success that we've seen in supporting economic development across the state over the last couple of years. As of just June 11th, a week and a half or so ago, the IEDC is on track to have another record-breaking year, which is impressive considering the challenges that we've all faced over the course of the last 14 to 18 months. But Indiana continues to be seen as one of the best places in the country for businesses to locate and expand their operations. If you want to go to the next one. But But what we've seen is just in the last 4 years, the IEDC has been able to secure nearly 100,000 commitments from businesses locating and expanding their operations here. 80% of those are from businesses that are already here today, but are seeing opportunities for growth in the state. But we know that that 100,000 jobs coming here over the course of the next couple of years is only in addition to the over 100,000 jobs that we know are open today, and employers are looking to fill those. So that's really why this idea of talent attraction and retention, by focusing on investments in quality of place and making your communities attractive places for people to live, work, and play in, remains really important for the state of Indiana. So to do that, and really, again, the objective of this initiative, Mike, if you want to go to the next slide, is to accelerate the state's population growth by attracting and retaining more people in the state, ultimately realizing net migration increases in Indiana. And to do that, again, with our partners in the General Assembly, plan to invest up to $500 million in regions across the state, where communities come together, work with one another to develop a strategic vision for their future and outline the projects and steps that need to be implemented to achieve that over the course of the next couple of years. So the structure again is outlined here. Won't dive too deeply into it, because I think the main thing that we can focus on today is answering your questions. But from what you'll see is really this resembles a similar structure to that which we implemented through regional cities, really encouraging your regional communities to identify themselves, to figure out who you are connected with and why, using to the extent that it's possible, data to understand really the labor shed that your communities sit in as a way to help define what that region is, but also some of the other historical connections that your communities have with one another as a way to shape what that region is. Once the region's been identified, that we encourage the regions to form their plan that outlines, again, the action steps and strategic lines of effort that you see as being important to be implemented, with the ultimate goal of attracting people to your region. And then, based off of the needs outlined in that plan, the IEDC will then determine whether and to what extent that we will invest in helping your region move that plan forward. One thing that you'll see here very briefly at the end is this idea of sustainability in the effort, both in terms of funding, by encouraging regions to think creatively about how you deploy the state's resources in the event that the IEDC makes a financial commitment to your region. So that way it's not just going out to projects and programs in the form of grants, but maybe investing in a way that brings some of that, if not all of that money, back to the region to allow you to reinvest that money into other opportunities. But also to make the IEDC comfortable and understand that this region is going to continue to work with one another, even after the state's money has been fully invested here over the course of the next couple of years. Thank you. So to reiterate, really the goal of this again is to encourage regions to develop long-term strategic plans focused on attracting and retaining people in the state, really by helping you create communities that are seen as of particularly high quality, that are attractive to people that are here today. Because I think that that's one thing that maybe we don't highlight enough, is this initiative is as important for keeping people in your communities today as they are bringing people to the state of Indiana from outside our borders. We know that rural and less urban areas of the state and their health and success are just as important as some of the other places in the state that may have been viewed as the focus of some of our other efforts. But we are trying to stress that it's not just about your urban centers, it's also about the health of the more rural areas of your region and of the state as well. One thing that we are stressing with this, we did in the past, but we think that it's critically important to have what we've labeled your anchor institutions involved in the planning and implementation processes. Those could be the largest employers in the community, your school districts, your higher education institutions, and community foundations and the like. to be engaged at the outset and encouraged to continue to be involved as your region moves forward for a couple of reasons. One, they have a selfish vested interest in the success of this region, and making sure that their needs are understood and addressed through this process is important. The other is many of those organizations have been here for quite some time and will continue to be here in the event that any one of us in this room move on to another community opportunity, whatever it may be. So it does provide some stability for the region as you move the plan forward. So really encouraging your anchor institutions to be involved in this. So for eligible communities, as Gary mentioned in his opening remarks, the first part may not necessarily apply to this region in that you don't have a regional development authority. But one thing that we learned from regional cities is not every community in the state is ready for a regional development authority or is a good fit for that structure. So we have tried to provide some flexibility to communities across the state to identify what organization, what nonprofit organization, if an RDA is a good fit, would be the vehicle through which we're able to make the investment. Part of it is just ease of operations for the state. We have one agreement with your region that we can get the money into projects through, but also it helps serve as kind of the coordinating body and the organization that's able to bring together that diverse group of stakeholders and ultimately move the region forward. So within the plans, we mentioned plans, quite a lot, and a lot of it is, it includes not just this is who we are and a description of what you want to be, an identification of these are the measures that we're going to benchmark ourselves against, and an outline of the overall goals and objectives of the region, but also the projects that are included to help you get there. It's not just the where you want to be, but how you do that. And some of those project ideas, again, continue to focus on quality of life and quality of place, much like regional cities. Those investments into your cities, towns, and rural areas that help create that high quality place that people want to be in. But we also know that across the state, but especially in those that may have been making these investments over the last couple of years, there are other things that help bring people and keep people within your cities and towns. So we're also looking to not just invest in brick and mortar construction projects, but also other maybe intangible programs or initiatives specifically focused on innovation and promoting entrepreneurship, as well as other talent development and attraction efforts. One thing I always try and highlight here by saying, we're asking you to put together a comprehensive plan, one that is not just focused narrowly on one project or issue. And in doing so, by asking your different stakeholder groups to work together, it'd be a little bit hypocritical if the state didn't do the same. So the IEDC has been working with our partners across state government that may have other funding alternatives for a trails project or broadband or other opportunities to see if we can coordinate with them to possibly utilize some of those alternative resources for projects included in your plan, to allow the commitment that the state makes through READI to go towards projects that may not have funding alternatives at the state level. So really what we would hope and our goal through this is that it's not just a $500 million initiative for Indiana, it grows into something more. That's really, I think, another example of a positive impact of this project is to make sure that we aren't just doing one-off things from the state level in terms of the commitments that we're making. We're really making sure that if we're able to invest in an economic development project in Southeast Indiana, how is that related to and coordinated with some of the other investments that the state is making, hopefully increasing and broadening the overall impact of that investment in an economic development project. So I just wanted to highlight that and encourage the region to not just think about maybe these three areas, but also, if there are other issues or projects that the region sees as being tied to improving place and talent attraction and retention, to not be discouraged from including that in the plan, because there could still be an opportunity for the IEDC and the state to help move that forward. And finally, wrap things up and then open the floor to any questions that you have. It's really a quick run through on the timing of this. You'll see that it is very aggressive, and we're moving quickly. There's a couple reasons for that. One is we know that there are some areas around the state that have been working on this effort for the last couple of years now and are prepared to move forward pretty quickly, and we didn't want to slow them down. We also know that some other areas of the state may need a little bit more time. So while this is the expectation today, and our hope and goal is to have regions submitting plans to the IEDC by August 31st, we are open to working with you if you do need more time to make sure that the product that you're able to pull together is something that you're proud of and that the state would be comfortable investing in at the end of the day. So again, this is the expectation, and we hope that every area around the state, every region is able to meet the timeline as it is today. But we are encouraging you to keep a very open line of communication with the IEDC so we know where you are in this process. And if we need to make modifications one way or the other, we can explore how we might be able to do that. But as you see, on May 3rd, we launched the initiative and asked for regions around the state to identify themselves and signal to the IEDC their intent to participate in this initiative. There is an opportunity by July 1st when you do submit that indication or notice to the IEDC to request some funding support from the state to help with the planning process. We've made $50,000 available to each region that is participating in this, with like the initiative itself, a match expectation there. But if there has been other planning efforts underway, while we would love to see dollars come to the table to match the state's dollars, we know that some of these expenditures have already been, again, underway. And if that planning work is going to be used in part as the basis for participation in this initiative, we would count that prior investment by the region towards the match for this, the planning funds. I neglected to mention, and I think it is important when thinking about match, I'll say two things. One, we don't expect the match in firm commitments from your regional partners to be at the table by August 31st. We know that this is going to be a plan that's implemented over time. Our vision is over the next 3-5+ years is the time horizon for when the plan is ultimately implemented. So if you're able to identify potential sources of funding that could be tapped into to be able to support the projects and initiatives included in the plan, again, you don't have to have those firm commitments by the time that you submit your plan to the IEDC. We can dive into the structure a little bit more, but really what we envision is as projects become ready for funding, as those commitments are secured, the region would be able to draw down effectively on the bank account with the IEDC as the funding is required. So I just wanted to stress that again with the accelerated timeline first and foremost, but also with all of our regional development efforts, we know that this isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow. In fact, we're encouraging regions to work quickly, but thoughtfully and strategically. One thing that is in the back of our heads is $500 million leveraging 4 additional dollars to the state's investment is going to result in a lot of activity across the state. We know that there are cost pressures today. We don't want to be directly responsible for the hyperinflation that could come about as a result of investing the money all at once. So, we are cognizant of that and ready to work with regions around Indiana to make the right investment at the right time in a way that's going to have the greatest impact for the region and for the state while not unnecessarily increasing the overall costs. Again, hopefully to allow us to invest in even more projects than may originally be outlined within the plan itself. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I probably could anticipate some of them. Happy to jump right into that off the bat, but we'll pause here and open the floor as well. But again, really do appreciate you inviting the IEDC to come down and join you today. And if there are questions today, questions that follow, really want to stress, we want to be a resource. At the end of the day, we want this to be successful, again, for almost every, if not every community in Indiana. And asking a question is not going to lead to the IEDC saying, you have a question, we're upset, and we're not going to give you a fair shake. And I think if the governor had his way, every county in the state would find a way to participate in this. So we're trying to take that to heart to make sure it becomes a reality. So that all stepped up.
So we do have a few people on the Zoom call. I'm inviting them to ask questions in the chat. But
One thing, Marty, if you clarify, if you have any more clarification since we spoke last, I know this is, IEDC is not in the business of doing grants, so it's a learning curve for everybody. Things have changed and worked over time, just like you spoke to. Is there any more clarification on the in-kind services as far as the match? And I did pick up on if there's already another project that's being, could be used for the comprehensive plan process now, that could be used sort of like an in-kind match. When it comes to the other side, what kind of in-kind match reasonably can we use for that?
So I would say from cities and towns perspective, in-kind could be, if you donate land to a trail project or to a workforce housing development, the fair market value of that land could be considered part of the local match. As when we get into, and this is where I think we're going to have to look at it kind of on a case-by-case basis when we head into the programmatic type scenarios. If we're looking at it from a we're dedicating staff time for employees that already are employed by the school district or something else to help manage a program, I think that's where things get a little bit more challenging for us to consider that in kind. But if as part of this initiative you have an individual come on to help manage a couple of different programs, and it's beyond what maybe their original job responsibilities were, as where we might be able to start to consider that as in-kind contributions. And then the other, I guess, is and I use this just as an example, not saying that this would be necessarily something that you would include in it, but from the private side, we can consider in-kind contributions. Say there's a workforce development program and you're using a particular software from a company that is donating it to the region at a reduced rate or free of charge, so you're able to use the platform, but not necessarily have to pay for it. We would again take what's the standard rate of that software license and include that as match. It doesn't have to be cash going into the project, although the cash obviously is easy to say this is clear match. One other thing on the local side too, outside of in-kind, I apologize for getting away from this, Gary, but we are taking a broad look at what that can be. It could be TIF abatement, local tax revenues that you have that you're contributing to the project, but also if you're able to bring some of the stimulus funds that your communities received, we're considering that to be local match as well. So just want to, that was one of those that has been coming up a bit, and just want to make sure that we are clear. I think that Indiana is a real opportunity, like other states don't, one, just because of the timing of this, to hopefully use this process to identify opportunities to invest those resources in a way that is going to be most impactful for your community and your residents in a way that's aligned with some of the other things and activities that are going on.
One of the things we spoke on, and a lot of this is talent attraction, which means adding capital to state Indiana to our region. And if there were a lot of housing, that you can speak ties. So if we were to do housing, and John Palmer can talk about this about broadband. For example, I know that REMC and Southeast Indiana Communications that are doing a project. Can some of that be counted toward if it's actually on specifically for a new
subdivision area.
Yeah, and I think, tying things like that together, and it gets kind of to the question of infrastructure. And when we would be interested in possibly using some of the ready dollars for this, as opposed to, our first look will be, well, can we go to IFA using, the utility fund that was created this past session? Are there other options that we can look to first? Is just how close that connection is between the actual infrastructure project, road, broadband, whatever it may be. I mean, that a lot of those are often weighted towards public investment as opposed to private, and say private development, and using that, even though state's resources aren't going into the housing development. If you're able to tie the two together and say, the housing development couldn't happen without this other investment, and we can use that then as, essentially one project rather than as the infrastructure project and the plan, and then this other investment activity that happens within the region. And I guess I say that and use an example here from regional cities as a way to say, when looking at the match, and I'll come back to something, hopefully I don't forget it. But one example where you're able to say, okay, there's an infrastructure project that we are then able to use some of the other investment as, part of the match for the project is a road and sewer project that we were able to do down in Warwick County, Indiana, which ultimately was necessary to unlock hundreds of millions of dollars in the creation of a new medical campus from kind of 3 major hospital systems down in the area. We took that as, that is really one project. So the $10 million that the state committed to new road and sewer and other connectivity was tied to the hundreds of millions of dollars in private investment from those hospital systems as one project. Now, if it would have been, let's just build this road, and then eventually something will come along, that gets harder for us to consider that match under the plan, because it seems more like two very distinct projects rather than one connected project. So just food for thought when thinking about how you can think about it, and how the IEDC will look at the expectation for matching investment in the plan. I guess the other thing I did want to mention with that 4-to-1 expectation is, we do know that other areas, certain areas of the state have more capacity than others, and this isn't an all for nothing type of a scenario. If it gets becomes apparent that finding $200 million in the next couple of years from various sources for projects in the plan, to make that 4-to-1 match to unlock a full $50 million might not be possible. Doesn't mean that the region is not one that we want to invest in. And we will work with you all to find out what's the right number. Even if it's not all the way up to the $50 million, something less, the state may still very well want to commit resources to see this region grow over the next couple of years. I keep kind of remembering what I also wanted to say. I can't.
Something on the map.
It is something about the match. It'll come to me.
So as we have some electeds in the room and other folks who we've been educating our local electeds around here, a lot of brainstorming around potential projects. Ideally, what level of planning or pre-planning for a ready eligible project should be completed at the end? Is that a hard requirement that there's something on paper somewhere to show that this project has some degree of planning behind it, or are we welcoming new ideas?
So I guess yes, and the reason why I guess I respond that way is, one, the IEDC has to have a fairly good idea about what we are investing in, and it doesn't necessarily, again, have to be, we know, at the corner of, First and Main, there's going to be this development, and, this is the developer we're going to use, and, this is what it's going to be, and these are the resources that are going to be available. But having examples of, we know that, there is, X amount of, unmet housing need within the community. And with that, you can estimate for number of new units, whether single family, multifamily, whatever it is, could cost approximately X millions of dollars. And, based off of, our experience, we expect, at least a certain amount coming from the private sources to develop it, but also there may need to be, this level of contribution from private or public sources to go into it. So I think that would be a baseline, kind of what we'd be looking for. But obviously, the more well thought out and developed, the easier it is for us to see and understand whether the plan can be successfully implemented. But I guess I say this with a caveat of, again, we don't expect this to happen tomorrow. And there may be some projects that are in the hopper that are critically important for this region that have been under development, but you just haven't been able to figure out how you make the numbers work. And this could be an opportunity for that. Whereas others are, longer term, maybe not quite there, but you want to make sure that it's included. The other item I guess I should highlight there too is, with the projects that you do include, tying them to the overall vision, I think is important too. So I just had the national pop back in my head.
Any other questions from the gallery?
Are there any minimum requirements to the comprehensive strategic plan, or is it just kind of open-ended? You guys are just going to say, give us your best and we'll review it?
So we have on our website, and I can share it with the team for broader distribution, a set of kind of plan guidelines, which outlines about 10 different areas that we are going to expect to see. And that is, who is your region, why? Where are you today? Where do you want to go? What's the vision? And then kind of the list of the projects, as well as kind of the framework that the region's going to use to help evaluate and ultimately make the investment decision. So it's trying not to be too prescriptive, in part because, one, Central Indiana, Indianapolis, the IEDC, the state can't come in Southeast Indiana and tell you, these are your challenges, this is your problems, and this is how you're going to address it. We really are looking to you all to provide us with an understanding of what those opportunities are and provide us with the chance to help you solve.
Can I ask
I guess I have a question. How many people in the room think this is a good idea? Anybody that doesn't like it? Well, I think it's an important question to ask because you're asking us to work together as a region. Mike and I have worked on a project for a couple of years now that could cross county lines. Both of us would benefit. There's some things out we can benefit with Berkeley County as well, over west of Batesville. And this Franklin County sits right there. That's our big stretch of I-74. But I just wondered if everybody was ready to do this, because I think it is important that we try to work together and not look at a project just in my backyard, but projects other places. One project that spins in my head because it might happen could generate 200 or 300 jobs in a couple of years. It'll be a temporary job. They'll have to be gone. So how do I take this project and use that influx of people that are going to come here and spend money and need a place to stay, and then they're going to go away? I don't want North Dakota to happen, where they had all those people going in for the pipeline, or not the pipeline, but the fracking. They were desperate to get people. They were desperate to have housing for them. Once those things are in, you don't need all those people anymore. You need a very small staff to do maintenance. And this project fits in that as well. But then what do they do? Well, I've got all these people coming in. They need a place to stay. We've got a couple of people that are thinking about, maybe we need a high-end RV park. Well, maybe we use that as impetus and have them put that in. These people are gone. They still have the RV park. They can still rent these spaces out for $75 to $100 a night. It's not like having a hotel. So that project will lead to other things. And one of the things in Franklin County that we talked about a lot is the importance of the increasing tourist dollars being spent in the county. And Mike's heard me say this too many times, but there's a county I visit every year, and it's up north in Wisconsin. And a couple of years ago, tourists left $360 million in that county. And that whole county is not geared for tourism. There's still farms up there and everything else. They found a way to make it work. You don't have people fighting farm machinery, because most of the farming is still done in the center part of the county, and so periphery takes place. We have something similar with our Route 101. If you can keep the activity there, then you don't mess up the farmers. And so it's a battle to try to get everybody together, but I think we can work on projects like that not only have that project happen, but then can help you do other projects. I think that's what you're looking for.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, John, you brought up a great point with your initial question. And one thing that we've, not applying to this region in any way, but when encouraging regions, say like, who are you really? Are you trying to shave yourself off to be able to capture, more money for your region as compared to saying, okay, but who am I really tied to? Because what we heard from communities that participated in prior regional economic development efforts said just that, and that was by starting to work together and going through the process was almost, was just as valuable as having access to resources to help actually move that plan forward. That I think at its core and at its foundation is really what we're trying to do here, is to get communities to start to coordinate and work with one another to help see how making an investment in Franklin County can really benefit Dearborn and Ripley and others. And because you may have somebody that goes to work in Franklin County, but then goes home to live in Switzerland County. There's not those, I guess, to like better term, kind of an artificial barrier between you. And by making an investment where those people live makes it more, makes that company that they work for more able to be able to attract a workforce. So that's really what we're trying to do. And then providing obviously some really valuable, significant resources as a way to make sure that the process doesn't just stop at the plan. The process continues into implementation to ultimately help realize the vision that your region puts together.
I'll make a comment. So as we've been learning about this opportunity, just the conversation to date has been great, because there's not really this having these folks, this makeup of people in the room is good, because there's not been many regional conversations. We do have the Southeast Indiana Regional Planning Commission, and they've been great, but as far as something specifically focused on economic development, quality of life type projects, this is kind of one of our first forays into it. And we know in other regions that have competed for regional cities in the past, they're much further along in this regionalism thing. We're kind of just, coming out of our shell maybe at this point about it. We don't have a regional framework, that organization, RDA set up. So can you speak to or help educate our folks, what that, as far as READI is concerned, it doesn't necessarily bode badly for us. This is the whole idea of the program, is to begin fostering this type of regional collaboration. And just because we're not as far along as other regions, doesn't mean that we can't be competitive for this program.
And Mike, I guess I'll say this, there are some other regions that have an RDA that aren't necessarily fully along in terms of regionalism, and really, engaging your communities together in a meaningful way. So I just say that because while in some places an RDA is great, and in many ways it's a tool that can then be used to help execute a project, implement it, whatever it is, because it has its own set of tools that it can be leveraged for. But again, it's not necessarily a clear indication of you've reached the pinnacle of regional collaboration. So I don't think that just getting started now is a detriment or will result in the state saying, no, you're not ready. Not prepared to participate. As long as we are able to see that there is some real collaborative efforts underway. I think that's really what we're trying to get to at the end of the day.
Yeah, it doesn't strike me as a very rigid program. It seems like there's going to be a lot of room for grace within this.
For good or bad, I realize that a lot of it just raises a whole bunch of
There's been a lot of questions, but that's, as I can tell the folks, I think it's deliberately vague, right, in a lot of ways for those reasons.
think by getting everybody here today in this room, is a big step we've taken. That shows we're willing to try to work out. So I think we need to keep pushing forward. And if you'd had this meeting scheduled, nobody showed up. I guess that would be a good indication. We don't want to work together, but you know, by listening to where everybody is from, I think we can find some common ground. You know, for our own, we always come to the table thinking about our own cities and how we lay that aside and think what it, and try to come up with something that is good for all. I think it's a good step. And I just, in my time as being mayor, and dealing with the state, I think they're really trying to get cities and counties to work together regionally. And I think that's something, I mean, we have been doing that to some degree, but not as much as other areas have been doing. They're the ones that they get wrong. And so even though maybe we're behind, I'd rather be a little behind and trying to catch up than just to say, well, forget it or not interested. So this is good for all here.
So, quick question. You talked about communicating the region, communicating with IEDC, especially as we develop match and especially as we develop projects. Are there IEDC contacts specifically assigned to our region and that may be able to mentor us a little bit on some of those things? Like, is this a good match? Is this a good project? How is this, you know, give us benchmarking too?
That's a fantastic question, and one that, you know, you can always reach out to me directly. You know, that's something that, you know, with regional cities, we did see as being really beneficial was to not have a project get to a point where, you know, commitments are made, but then you come to the IEDC and say, hey, can we use some of our money for this? And there's some uneasiness with it. So, you know, me at a minimum, we are also looking at, you know, other ways we can engage members of our staff, it could be Trevor, or other people specifically focused on coordinating with regions. So yeah, me, but likely some other people will be directly involved too, that you'll have access to them. And I remember my match question was, you know, is it by project or is it the plan as a whole? You know, and one thing I want to stress is when we look at you know, our investment as compared to other partners in this, you know, we look at the global universe of the plan, knowing again that different types of projects are going to have different levels of, you know, match from the private sector or from other local public sources. So when, you know, if there is a project that's really important, the region says it's of critical importance for your entire community, and it may require a one-to-one from the local unit and from the state, we're not going to come and immediately say no. You know, we're really saying, you know, use maybe some other projects that may be more heavily weighted one way or the other to help balance that out if you need to. But just because, you know, again, a project doesn't meet the match expectations that we've outlined itself, that's not a disqualifying factor for it.
So in your slideshow, I see a list of project ideas that you have, and I understand those list ideas. There's 9 other regions throughout the state. Can you talk specifically about maybe 1 or 2 that you think are good projects for their different areas, so you can get an idea of what to look for? And second question is, would you rather see one big, huge project or something maybe 2, 3, 4 small?
2 great questions. And actually, the first, it sparked something that I was going to say, Mike, when you asked your question about, you know, do you come with new ideas or, you know, how far along in development do these concepts have to be? And one thing, you know, we are encouraging REITs to be creative and figure out, you know, how you address, you know, certain issues in your region. But we're also not saying, you know, completely reinvent the wheel. You know, to use your prior experience to build on that, you know, take a program that may have proven successful in Brookville and expand it throughout the region, possibly, just as an example. Or if you want to replicate a program that's proven to be successful at the state level, and essentially create one specifically for your region, encourage you to think about that too, whether it be like, for example, our manufacturing readiness grant program, which we've been able to support. I think it's over 100 manufacturers around Indiana make investments in technological upgrades within their facilities to improve their operations and help them remain competitive. We could use some of these ready dollars to specifically target that for manufacturers in your community. As far as other example projects that would be of interest to us, those could be some examples, but really others that could be used, and this might not be a perfect fit here, but is an example of pulling different stakeholder groups together in a meaningful way that really helps kind of transform an area of the community. Is a project down in Evansville where they partnered with the utility, some universities in the area, as well as a private developer, to create a multifamily development that is essentially a living lab. And they've been able to incentivize the residents to become more energy efficient by giving them prizes, by turning down the air on their phone, and it's really a connected environment that pulled together again a bunch of different stakeholders in a way that creates something that's really interesting, but also meets a need to fill high quality workforce housing within a downtown area of the community. Again, might not be a perfect fit for all of you here, but is an example of one that helps demonstrate what can happen when different interest groups come together to help address the need. Another, it could be as simple as a community park, one that again helps create a high quality place. But if those projects you can be involved in, use it kind of a park and amphitheater project that we funded through regional cities. It's great to have a park and a community event space. But what I think we'd be really looking for is then how does the region plan to use it, and how is it going to be activated, for lack of a better term, over the course of the next couple of years, rather than just we built a new community center and that's the end of the road. If we really want to understand how the city or town that's located in is ultimately going to, again, help use that to the benefit of their city and town, but also others around.
Growing population, right? Those bigger overarching goals. Can you speak to the competitive nature of the READI program? Can you disclose how many regions might have self-identified with that deadline coming up July 1st and what we might be up against?
Absolutely. So officially, I have in my inbox 4. The 7 counties in Northwest Indiana, the 3 that participate in regional cities in North Central, and then the 7 in kind of along US 31, Tipton, Howard, Fulton, Miami. I'm really starting to memorize them that with Indiana. And then the 5 counties here just to the west of here, along southern Indiana, kind of the northern Louisville area, including Jefferson County. So those are the 4 that officially submitted. We kind of anticipate somewhere between, and catch me on which day, and recent conversations that I had, anywhere between, I'd say 9 to 15 regions potentially participating. I think it really, again, kind of gets back to the point of how much do they try and kind of break themselves down when thinking about what the region is. But I'd say that with the understanding that even though there may be more than 10 with equal investments in each, it doesn't mean that the IEDC will be able to work with regions across the state to understand realistically what can be invested here over the course of the next 4+ years, and tailor the commitment to that need to maybe do more than 10 at the end of the day. And Brian, I can't remember if I answered your second question. I apologize. if I didn't.
You did, you gave a couple of examples.
Any more questions from anybody? Mark, we'll let you kind of finish up and close up, then we're gonna have a couple remarks and then finish up today.
Oh, again, just want to say thank you. It's a particularly, exciting time at the IEDC and with this new initiative that we've been, asked to help lead. We see an opportunity for Indiana's communities across the state to, I don't want to say capitalize on the positive economic outlook that the state had going into the pandemic and now coming out in a way that other states around the country don't have. And making these investments in the short term, hopefully, leading to some pretty substantial economic growth for the state here over the course of the next few years. So please, treat the IEDC as a resource, and we want to make sure that this is not just successful for a limited few number of places around the state. We really want to, try and have this initiative have an impact, in every community in Indiana in a direct way or indirectly by helping to develop plans and highlight kind of the next steps for what that community and broader region needs to do to ultimately become as prosperous as possible. So thank you all for having us today.
We'll explain a little bit to the group of kind of how we came together. There's a young man in the back by the name of Trevor Lane, who's also with IEDC. Over the years, he's always encouraged us to do regionalism work. And we've been doing that since, SIEGA's been in existence since we went back and looked, since 2009. It's 5 counties down here in the corner. And again, for this project, we believe Union County will join us for this project here. We drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago about regionalism for us makes us much bigger than we are as one little town of Osgood or Milan or Liberty, fill in the blank what little town it is. When we're trying to cast our net to Cincinnati, and how this region got designed was just like the region I work for. There's 3 major metropolitan areas there. And how we divvied this up was basically where do we get our news stations from? And all these counties get it from Cincinnati. You get to Decatur County, that's heading north. You get west of us, with Trevor over there in Jennings County, he get maybe Indianapolis and Louisville at times. So we are definitely Cincinnati. And in one of the presentations that was given very recently, they recognized we are part of Cincinnati. So we came together as a region. So for us to pool our dollars together, and we've been on missions as Cincinnati site selectors over the years. So we had been working together as a region. But again, once we go to each individual county or town, sometimes they don't live beyond our borders because they've got a lot of work to do as local elected officials to take care of their town. So we, as a group, designed this. It came up, it was kind of a natural transition for us because it's an IEDC program for us to kind of spearhead this, get it going, get it where it's at. And I'm going to ask for Mary McCarty to come up here. She represents Region 9, I'm sorry, so many words. She represents Southeast Center Regional Planning Commission. And through the partnership with them being our fiscal agent, we were able to check that box. The other box is being part of SIEGA as a nonprofit. John Bond is finishing that up. And there's also one for, it's called READI, SEI READI, and might come up with that. So it seems to be working. So Mary, if you'd like to come up and explain a couple things. One is the comprehensive plan being put together. There was a, last week, there was basically a scoring process that was done. And Mary's going to have a couple things to say about that and kind of the work that she's done with us. So I'll kind of step out of the way here.
Thanks, Gary, or not thanks, Gary. I don't know. I don't know which to say. We, as a region, Southeast Indiana Regional Planning Commission, we cover more than the SIEGA counties, and Union is not in our region, but we can partner with them for sure. But kind of as we've been moving and we've been working with SIEGA towards getting a project together and getting a plan together, giving the very short time frame of August to get this together, we thought it was very important to probably get a consultant on board to help us convene all the local units of government and private partners and community foundations and educators and get everybody in the room within a short time frame. So last week we had organized with our LEDOs, each of our LEDOs, they had a representative from each county except for Union. And we organized interviews with 3 different firms that specialize in this type of work, comprehensive planning, and we had a Zoom with each of those, about an hour-long interview. And it was unanimous. We kind of decided, we had some people score. The scores came unanimous with one firm, that's HWC Engineering. So kind of where we are with it, we have not let them know that yet. We're gonna make contact with them hopefully early next week to try to see if we can, get a contract together, kind of what our scope looks like, and help us to meet that aggressive time frame. Within the Regional Planning Commission, I think all of you have faced this too, is there's been an abundant amount of money, which is not always, it's a good thing, but it's left us all with a lot of extra work on our plates and figuring out the best way as stewards of that money to spend it. So we felt it was helpful to have an outside firm to kind of help get everybody to convene. And only thing I would ask you all is be open-minded through that process, and also be willing to try to step up and come to those meetings. It's not going to work unless we have participation from many groups. So I know that they're going to probably be getting meetings together really quickly and say, hey, can you come? And we need to try to make that a priority in order for our region to be successful. So did I cover everything? Okay, all right. Any questions on that? I'd be glad to answer them. Also, I would like to add, we do have several ongoing things I think can help us use this match. We have a broadband study that we've done for the region with Purdue Center for Regional Development, and they're also doing a transportation resiliency study for us. So there's several studies that on top of our comprehensive economic development strategy that we do, that we can help pull together and lend. You can use whatever we have to make it successful. So I think that can help with the matching probably. So once we get together and we can get something organized, we get the ball rolling, we'll still blend that information to make this successful. Any questions? All right, good.
So kind of finish up and close up, I'd like to ask either John or Mike, if you guys would like to add anything to this. Again, what you guys are seeing today is what we do as regionalism for the EDCs for a long time. And of late, we've been having up to 3 meetings at a time during the week just to get to where we're at today. So yes, there's been a lot of work on the backside, and we appreciate everybody's hard work. So reach out to your local economic development director, wherever that happens to be, or reach out to anybody for that matter, because we're all in this together as we move forward. Mark, would you like to finish up with any comments to constituents and otherwise? Yeah, Mike. I said Mark again. Twice today I've done that. See, what are you looking at?
No, but there is a private sector support letter going around, and a local government letter of what do we call it? Letter of
Commitment.
Endorsement, I think, for the regional identification. So if you're a local government official, you're the board, council, whatever, haven't had a chance to consider that, get in touch with the veto. They can kind of walk you through that. It's not a committal of funds or anything. It's again, the deadline July 1st is to have our regional identification in for Southeast Indiana. And so that's kind of priority number 1, is whipping together the region, making sure counties, cities within the region are mostly aligned, and having that as our evidence for the IEDC to look at when we submit the application for a regional identification by July 1st. So if you haven't seen that, or you'd like to, I do have a few copies here I can pass around, but I'm ready to go with those.
And we dig everybody's email. So what we'll do is we'll break that down. Then Becker will break it down in a spreadsheet, get it to all the LEDOs. They will get it to everybody for the PowerPoint presentation today. And that will also give you access to your local LEDO. That's going to be, the point person if you have any questions to ask them. We want to kind of keep this going. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today, spend as much time chatting. Again, this is all about, coming together as one big, happy, dysfunctional family over time. So again, thank you very much for everybody coming out.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.